alternative asset management area, hedge funds, private equity firms, and all the service providers behind that. A lot of our former colleagues joined us, and we were able to grow. So we started growing even though we weren't planning to grow, and we opened up a financial services group, which is really recruitment around the middle office operations, trade support, risk surveillance, KYC, AML type jobs. And then we launched a healthcare group. And from there, we launched a pharmaceutical group. And then we launched an IT group and an office support group and a creative group and an architectural engineering group. So what we do, we all kind of stay within our verticals as we recruit. And about 10 years ago, we were a perm recruiting firm, meaning we were only looking for permanent positions. We got into the temp side of the business. We became a staffing temp agency 10 years ago, which is a whole different model from what our executive search business is, right? Because that temp staffing is, it's a very fast moving business. It could be everything from getting someone in there just for a day, or someone who's in there for a consulting assignment for a few months that goes perm. So we launched that business 10 years ago, and it took off, and it kind of eclipsed our perm business in certain ways. We opened up different offices, locations. So we have 10 different locations, from Chicago to Rockville, Maryland, Long Island, New York City is our headquarters, Cary, North Carolina, Jacksonville, Orlando. Randy, I'm missing something, I know, but anyway, so we have all these different locations. So we stay all within our verticals. Now, years later, I'm still heavily involved, managing a firm. I have, gotten away from the recruiting a little bit, but I still do a lot of business development as well as manage and train the recruiters. We have hired entry-level people. We don't necessarily believe 100% anymore that someone needs to be out of that industry to recruit. We do a lot of training and mentoring of our people. Sometimes we start them off in research type positions to learn the terminology, the candidates, and recruiting has changed drastically since I've been involved over the last 20 years. There are some aspects that are definitely old school, but with technology changing, Green Key has invested a tremendous amount of our money into the technology for our recruiters. So I'm sure everyone uses LinkedIn. I mean, LinkedIn started, I don't even know, 15 years ago. So, I've been using it since day one, but it's obviously evolved, and now it's Microsoft. But, that's just part of, what recruiting is. But there are a lot of different resources that we have at our fingertips, and how we go about selling our services and things like that. So coming out of Oneonta, if you ask me, would I be a recruiter? I would say absolutely not. If you asked me when I was in public accounting, would I be a recruiter? I would say absolutely not. And once again, even coming out of Merrill Lynch, it probably was not even on my radar until I kind of had an epiphany as to, wow, I think I'd be really, really good at this, right? Because listen, when you're going to work, your first job is probably not going to be your last job, right? And you want to do something you really have a passion for. Otherwise, you're going to be miserable. And I could tell you that because we meet many, many candidates, obviously, that aren't happy in their, where they are. And it's the same reasons. They don't have a mentor. There's no room for advancement. Their compensation is not correct. Location, flexibility, benefits, workload, hours. It's all the same thing, right? So you got to make sure that you're doing something you have a passion for. If you do, it's not necessarily work. It's something you just come to enjoy from a day-to-day perspective. That's a little bit, I hope that was kind of informative. But if anyone has questions regarding who we are, what we do, what is an executive recruiting firm and a staffing agency, happy to answer anything and everything.
Hi.
How you doing?
Elizabeth, but
Hi,
you
Elizabeth.
say Liz. So can you go into more about what your executive recruiting firm does on like a daily basis?
Sure, that's a good question. So it really depends at what level you are and how long you've been recruiting. But in the beginning, we're really training people and trying to show them kind of who our clients are. So our clients range from big Fortune 100 companies to mom and pop shop, privately held companies, to hedge funds, to not-for-profits. So every company we have has a different culture, and every job that we recruit for obviously wants a different profile. So, and that's why we kind of keep our recruiters within sectors. We don't let recruiters for accounting, finance recruit healthcare people. It doesn't work like that. Our recruiters are experts in what they do. So, their day-to-day is really understanding what are the jobs that we have right now and where do we find the right people. Sometimes, and there are a lot of ways to go about that. Sometimes we have the right people we're in touch with. Sometimes it's referrals. We have a tremendous database. We use a platform called Salesforce, which is a very popular company these days as our CRM. And so we're constantly out there on a day-to-day basis talking with candidates, post-COVID, meeting with candidates, meeting with clients, trying to understand what is it that they're looking for. So recruiters play a number of different roles, right? Yeah, sometimes we could be a gatekeeper. Sometimes we are an educator as to, hey, where do you want to go in your career path? I'll tell you how to get there. And I know the path because I've walked people and I've seen people, go through this many a time, right? So we're trying to become an expert in what we do. And then sometimes we become a psychologist, right? Because you're talking to people that are, not necessarily having the best day at work all the time. So they tend to come to vent to you and you talk them off the ledge. We become a detective, right? Sometimes we're really trying to figure out what's going on. Why is this person really looking? Are they really telling me the truth here? Let's kind of, dig in here. A career counselor, we're helping them with their resumes. We're prepping them for interviews. We're counseling them. We're negotiating their compensation when we get them offers. We're talking about how to go through a resignation process and make sure you do it in the proper way, because everything's about relationships. You want to keep these relationships, although you're leaving a job. There's a way to do it, right? If you just resign and leave the next day, your employer's not going to be too happy. It's not the professional thing to do. So we're holding candidates' hands, whether I could be dealing with someone who's 50 years old. It might be their first job search because they might been at one company their whole career, or we could be dealing with someone a year out of school. So typically our candidates do have experience. We typically don't place entry-level people because our clients pay us fees based upon that experience. And they pay us hefty fees. They'll pay us, on a perm placement, 25% of first year total guaranteed comp. So that could be a CFO or COO making $800,000. We get paid a significant amount of money for what we do. And there's a lot of behind the scenes going on that most people don't see. It's like, what do you really do? You meet someone, they hire them? No. There's a process, right? And typically when we meet with candidates, we're trying to show them a couple different interviews. We're listening to them to what they really want to see out there instead of sending them on a shopping spree of interviews. So, your day could be filled with cold calling. It might be a lot of emailing, texting. It could be meetings, Zoom calls. It could be prepping people for interviews, getting feedback from interviews, talking about the next step in their careers, and getting them onboarded at a new client. All this stuff that I'm talking about is just, it's very scary when you're on the other side. I've been on the other side. When you're going through it, it's like you want someone. Some people go through it alone and they do a great job. They use LinkedIn, but we're there to kind of, for our clients as well as for the candidates. Hope that answered your question.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, Robert. It's Charlene Deno. I just got back from a walk, so hope my hair is fitting in the frame. It's 70 today in Oneonta, so I bet you're jealous about that.
That's nice. Nothing like a 70-degree day in Oneonta.
Absolutely. I've been involved with the backpacks program from the faculty side for probably about 6 years now. I took it over from Dave Ring when he retired. And I'm coordinating where all the students go, where all the faculty go, how they're going to get to the city, and all this stuff. I work with people in Tim's office for the logistics. Somehow I've never been to you. I steered myself somewhere else. So
Yeah,
as soon as the next in person, expect me to be in front of you because I definitely am interested. But my question for you to help our students is how do you decide when you're going to go into a new market? You said you're in Jacksonville, you're in Chicago, etc. What are you doing to find the market and then set up camp there?
Yeah, so that's a good question as well. What we're very good at, because we're really very straightforward with who we hire and we have very good retention, is that what we find, and with Randy's help, who's on here, she actually is one of the reasons why we've grown into different markets. While we're always recruiting for our clients, from day one, we're always recruiting for ourselves. Right. So Randy's recruiting recruiters, which couldn't be a harder job out there than to try to recruit a recruiter. And when we've been very lucky where Randy maybe has introduced us to a pharmaceutical, one or two people in Orlando, let's say. And then what happens is with recruiting firms, sometimes, as they get seasoned, they get bought by private equity firms, and then their structures change for people and the recruiters kind of scramble. So we've been kind of lucky where we've hit upon recruiters that recruit like we do, and have the same philosophy about recruiting and training. And once we realize that, they sometimes have introduced us to other recruiters, right? Chicago happened from Orlando. Orlando happened because of Randy, right? And so sometimes it happened that way. Our first office outside of New York was Long Island. I live in Long Island. I don't work out of that office, but we had someone that worked with us said, how about opening up a Long Island office? We were like, why don't you go interview with other recruiting firms and tell us who our competition is? So that one was more like, hey, we don't think we have much competition. Let's go out there and we're going to recruit like we're from New York City, not in Long Island. And we gobbled up the marketplace there. So, sometimes it's just luck. Now with COVID and everything, it's kind of like, we were in like many companies, who would have thought, right? 2 weeks in, I'm like, we'll be back in the office in 2 weeks, not a problem. But obviously, it didn't happen. So we started investing heavily within our internal technology about 2 years ago. So we went to, as I mentioned, to Salesforce, and we moved all our servers out of our office. And maybe this was after Sandy, and went into the cloud. And this way, everyone could work virtual, even though, and we did have a couple people working remotely. But when this happened, we had the ability to all of a sudden everyone go remote and basically just keep going till this day. So we have not mandated people back into the office. So right now it's like, it'll never be the same again. But I think people will acclimate back into the offices, when as people get vaccinated and stuff like that. But that's how we open up new offices. If we identify a team in Atlanta that does accounting finance, we had a recruiter, a really good recruiter in our accounting finance group that came to us, who was working with us for about 4 years, and he goes, I'm moving home to Pittsburgh. And we were like, and this was pre-COVID, we're like, okay, we're going to open up a Pittsburgh office for you, and you'll build it out, right? Who would think Pittsburgh? Well, we run our accounting finance national recruiting group out of there, and now we recruit nationally, versus just the New York City area. And it's been extremely successful because he has a group there that leverages off. I have 35 accounting finance recruiters. So we kind of we pick our hubs. We don't recruit everywhere. We'll pick, Atlanta, Florida, places in Florida, the bigger hubs out there. We're not going to take a search in, some far off suburb. That's not what we do. We're very good at what we do, and we know what we do, and we try to stay within our lane. So sometimes we will walk away and say it's just not what within our wheelhouse. Any other
Excellent,
comments?
thank you.
Yeah.
If there's no students, I did peek a little bit at your LinkedIn profile, and you're right. A couple of hours before we met, I got a LinkedIn request from you, and suddenly we were talking. But I noticed in your profile that, or in our conversations, that you had some roles on campus. You're part of the SAMI fraternity, for example.
Sure.
And I've met several other Sammy fraternity brothers over time, and they're I think very driven, very goal-oriented folks. Can you talk a little bit about what you did on campus that maybe influenced what you were able to accomplish today?
Yeah, I think when I walked into Oneonta, I was, out of high school, not knowing what's going on, heads or tails, and definitely probably more on the introverted side. But when I came into Oneonta, and listen, I was 1989 fall freshman year, I rushed got into and pledged a fraternity, and I ended up meeting some great guys, and it kind of, the whole social situation changed. I was very serious about my schoolwork, but you know, we did community service, we did socials, we did a lot of different things within Oneonta, and it just kind of brought me out of my shell. And my, in my eyes, I became the treasurer of the fraternity my junior year. I played an active role with that, with interfraternity council and stuff like that. I just enjoyed it. It was fun. Met a lot of great people, and and I'm in touch with all these people today. And even people outside my fraternity that were in my accounting classes, like you mentioned, I actually had Dr. Ring as my economics professor. I remember I had him 2 times, I believe. But it just overall, Oneonta for me was such an amazing experience. And it's interesting because now, obviously, I have a daughter who's a sophomore in college, and watch where some of these kids tend to go to school, and where I live, they all tend to drive towards the same 10 to 15 schools out there. But and they kind of, my daughter ends up, she's going to a Big Ten school. And I guarantee Oneonta was so much better. It was more hands-on. It was so much fun. They're like, oh, but what about the football game? We didn't need football games. Don't worry about it. It's still, so I haven't been up there in a long time. But, I have seen, and we have seen people out of Oneonta, just been really competitive, with the other SUNY schools. So when I came out of Oneonta, there was no backpack briefcases or anything like that. There was limited recruiting on campus, but I actually would get in my car and drive over to SUNY Albany because all my friends were in their Beta Alpha Psi program, and all the accounting firms were coming up there all the time. So I would just barge my way into, I couldn't maybe get included in the on campus stuff, but once they were off campus, my friends would be like, come on, they're all here. So it's kind of, you got to really put yourself out there, especially within this COVID pandemic era. If you looked at the market and people graduating, and people have a stigma on millennials, they don't work hard, they expect everything to come to them, and that's all out the window, right? So, the people that are graduating today or this year realize that, wow, I really need to, sell myself and work hard to get the right experience just to get the right job right now, especially coming out entry level, where 2 years ago, they were thinking the world should be at my feet. Well, you know what? Those people from 2 years ago now are competing with you for their jobs, right? So there's a weird dynamic going out there, so you really, and especially with social media and being careful of how you're posting on your Facebook, on your Instagram. And Randy could tell you stories. We hire, and we know that, listen, we got to look. We have to look at the Facebook. We need to look at Instagram. We need to make sure that photos aren't out there that are compromising. We have very, very prestigious clients that will, not want to work with us based upon things like that, professional LinkedIn profiles and things like that. So you got to be very careful, and you got to be strategic, and you got to build relationships. It's not enough just to send a resume to get by. I posted an article on LinkedIn the other day about how to get past the AI, right? Because that's the future of everything. And it's not just enough to get past the AI, right? If you have a relationship, if you know someone, a friend, a family member, anyone that will direct you in the right way, use them, ask them, beg them, hoping you send it to a web portal and someone comes back to you. I mean, you'd be lucky if you get through it, right? So it's kind of like, if I was to look for a job now, how would I go about it? I'd be doing what these students are doing right now, right? Getting on and using all the career resources Oneonta has available, all the Oneonta alumni. I'd be going on LinkedIn and reaching out to those alumni everywhere, whether they're involved in this program or not. I'd be asking my friends, my family, where does everyone work, you know? So it's a whole different ballgame out there. Oneonta, you know, again, I think they have a lot of great people out there. I think everyone has had a great experience up at the college. And, you know, when you meet someone from Oneonta, you went there, you kind of just look at each other and you could just start a conversation, right? Tino's Pizza, you have a million things in common. Who'd you have as a professor? You know, where'd you live? I lived in Toby Hall. You know, I lived on New Market Street, or, you know, and it's kind of, you share this little, you know, this commonality with all these people. So you got to use that to your advantage, you know.
That sounds great. And you'll be pleased to know that the Career Services Office has moved into the Hunt Union. So immediately when you walk in on your way to what was Sbarro at one point and is now Starbucks, you have to pass by Career Services in order to do that. So we've put it in a more prominent place.
Yeah.
I was just wondering, of the students that are on the call today, how many of you have either done backpacks in the past or some kind of either this year or last year getting on the bus? Or have you used Career Services? I mean, just tell us about that process. Liz, you can jump in if you want.
Yeah, I was gonna see if anyone else had to say. Well, I'm only a sophomore, so I plan on using the Career Service Center more next semester, and I wasn't able to get on the bus to any events yet because I only joined this club last semester and it was like Corona still going on, so wasn't able to use anything yet. But hopefully next semester or the following semester, things will be more in person possibly. And yeah, the Career Service Center is something I'm looking to get involved with soon.
Great.
Just to add to that, I'm a senior and I kind of got late to the jump with using the Career Development Center and all that, but I definitely recommend it. It was definitely a lot of help and I wish I had gone there sooner.
Great.
Tom, can I put you on the spot? And since you are a senior, do you know what you're doing next year or general field?
I'm a finance major, so I've been talking with a lot of different firms like Northwestern Mutual, a couple other alums, because I play on the lacrosse team. We're talking with a lot of the alums that played on the lacrosse team here in the past, and they've been giving me. I've also been talking with some other local firms of people that I just know that said that they would have a job for me after, but nothing set in stone yet. I'm still obviously looking and still eager to learn about all the other different career paths that I can take with this major.
Yeah, there's a lot you can do. I mean, finance is wide open. There's so many things that you can do, whether you're going to do sales, front office, trading, back office, middle office operations, work for a non-financial service company. You know, you just, again, you know, the most important thing is that you work for a professional, ethical company where you feel they're going to mentor you and add value to your background, right? And that's what I tell every candidate, whether you're coming out of school or you're making a job move. You know, it's got to be making you more marketable, adding to your skill set. And this way, as you go about your career, you know, you're constantly building and, you know, building up your resume, building up your skill set. So yeah, you know, you should get out there and see as many things as possible. And, you know, I'll tell you, recruiting is not for everyone. You know, just like I didn't want to be an accountant anymore, and accounting's not for everyone. You know, but I did it. But it's not something long-term I had any interest in doing. But we meet a lot of people, especially agency recruiting, right? There's different types of recruiting. There's corporate recruiting. You could be a corporate recruiter at Goldman Sachs and you fill their jobs. And that's what you do. You get a base salary, maybe you get a bonus, and it's a great role. Would I ever do it? Not in a million years. Because, you know, on the agency side, it's more for you basically there's no cap to your income. Right. So I can make as much as I want, as hard as I could work. And that's why I left the corporate world. I was an accountant at Merrill Lynch making a base salary. And then at the end of the year, my boss would say, okay, I will give you a 15% bonus. but I was working till 11 o'clock at night. Why? I have great performance reviews. That led me to like, I want to, if I know I could outwork anyone. And so therefore it's like, if I could find a job where there's no limit to what I can make, which was important to that was partly important to me, but I also didn't want to be another cog in the wheel, right? So I was like, if I could also have an impact on people, that I didn't realize, when I first graduated, I didn't realize that was important to me. But as I went through and I was in these big corporations, I was like, you know what, I'm a cog in the wheel. If I'm out today or if they let me go, it's not going to make a difference. But when I got into recruiting, I was like, wow, I'm making a huge difference in everyone's, in someone's life, right? I'm changing their career sometimes. I'm changing where they're going to work. I'm advising them. They are listening to me. So you build these real long-term relationships. I mean, I have candidates that I've met when I looked like a baby-faced kid getting into recruiting, and now I have gray hair, and so do they, and they're CFOs, and they become our clients. They hire from us, and they know us, and they know how we work, and things like that. So get out there and meet as many people, even if it's on Zoom, to get an idea of kind of what they're going to do and how they're going to train you and make you more marketable coming out of school.
Robert, Tom may know this because he's a senior, but for Liz and some of our other younger students attending the call, can you describe for them back office, middle office, front office, so they have a better context to put this all in?
No problem. Yeah, and it really relates to any industry. When I talk front office, it's really the revenue generators, right? Those are that's what we are as recruiters. We are front office. We are generating revenue for the company. In financial services, it would be the traders. It would be the investment bankers, the ones putting together the deals, the ones making the trades. In advertising, it would be sales, the sales platform. The middle office within financial services is facing off with the front office and facing off with the back office, and that's why they're the middle, where they're doing a lot of reconciliation, trade reconciliation. There could be risk type work, a lot of interesting work, and you'll see sometimes people transition from that middle office function into the front office over time, since they are building those relationships with the front office day in, day out. And then what I would consider the back office really are the accounting people, where they're usually on another floor in the company. They're really not interacting so much with the front office anymore, other than what I described in public accounting, which is a client interfacing job. But when you're in the private industry, if you're at Merrill Lynch, the trading floor is on floor 5, you're on floor 37, right? And yes, you might have some interaction, and very often we get candidates that they want to be a front office person. And, it's kind of like, it's not such an easy transition to do after you have some experience. But, typically what we'll say to those candidates, well, let's find you a job that lets you interact with the front office. You need the exposure, right, to form the relationship. And sometimes you will see someone get lucky and get pulled into the front office, because the front office, they're generating the revenue. Typically, they're the highest paid people within the company, right? Everything, the back office people, they could be very well compensated, but they're not going to be able to come close to the front office revenue generators.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Randy, you want to add anything that I missed? Okay.
Okay, I was on mute.
That's okay.
You covered it pretty well, Rob. I don't know if anyone has any questions about our internal recruiting, or if anyone's interested in being a recruiter, but I'm happy to answer those questions online, offline, LinkedIn.
Maybe give a little quick overview for the students, because they may not know what question to ask. This could be their first exposure at a recruiting firm. So maybe give them a little overview of what what that side would be like, what you would tell them.
So recruiting recruiters is interesting because a lot of people don't go to school to study recruiting. It's not typically a degree, though some schools do have a degree or classes, not a degree, classes around staffing and recruiting. So a lot of the people that we hire are career changers, similar to Rob's background. My background also, I was an accountant at Ernst & Young for 4 years before getting into HR. And then from my HR background, I was able to use some of those skills and my personality to be a recruiter at Green Key. But it's very common for us to hire people who have communications degrees, psychology degrees, even have studied social work, who want to use those skills to help candidates and clients with their either career goals or talent needs. So we're open really to any background. We very much look at people's personalities, having that ability to be a self-starter, an entrepreneurial mindset, people who are financially motivated, but also ethical and professional, not looking to just make a dollar, but looking for the long-term benefit and the financial gains of working hard. And like Rob said, working hopefully harder than the people around them and our competition to place talent and help candidates find what they're looking for in their careers.
Yeah, so especially it's hard for us with entry level, but we've been lucky. Plus, we do vet them by having lots of people internally meet with them, because the recruiter that we're looking for has it is a certain balance, right? It is the personality. It's not necessarily their skill set. They don't have the skill set. It's something we're going to teach them. The questions are they smart? Are they trustworthy? Are they ethical? Are they professional? Are they self-starter? Could they be mentored? Will they listen? You'd be shocked how many people you think would be unbelievable recruiters, and they think they know how to do it, because in essence, what we do is very simple, but it's not. It's actually really complicated. There's 20 million steps to what we do. So we're kind of trying to vet out the right personality to what would be a fit, and not just for short term, long term. We're looking for people long term. We want people that want to come in here and open up a new office or do something, that truly have that entrepreneurial bug. And there's no better feeling when Randy could bring someone in like that, and then we could train them up, and before you know it, they're making more money for themselves than any other person that they work with, right? Because they get it. It's recruiting clicks with some people, and sometimes they never get it. And that's why I say it's hard for us to find what is that right person. It's hard to define the personality also, because we have a lot of different divisions. So if I was to recruit a nurse versus recruit a biostatistician, it's very different personalities of what you're recruiting for. So there is this common thread of everyone at Green Key, but there's also definitely a little bit different quirks based upon who their candidate or clients that they're working with. So, that could be, we have a creative group, right? Versus our accounting finance group. So they're just different personalities. Not that one person could not move internally, because we've been successful with that as well, where we've taken people who might not have loved working in one area, and all of a sudden they become extremely successful in another area, as well as because our temp business and our perm executive search business, they are two very different businesses, although they're kind of mashed together. Being a temp staffer is very different from being a perm. Our temp staffers are on a base salary and a commission. Our perm recruiters are on like a draw salary with a very high commission. So there might be more risk on the perm side, but there could be higher compensation as well. But some of our temp recruiters definitely also probably make more than our perm recruiters. So that's it. I hope to see you guys in the office next year.
Sure. Do we still have a little bit of time for maybe one or two more questions if you have any? I do have one that I think I can always toss out a softball, but Liz, Tom, Haley, Deb, Emily, anyone?
I have a question. So I'm an alumni, and I currently am not, so I don't think that my current job is what I'm looking for. So what advice would you give to like shift industries and find that passion that you were talking about earlier?
It really depends how much of a shift you're looking to make, right? So you have to look at your work experience and think about what it could relate to. Sometimes it's very difficult to make a 180 and do something totally different, and reinvent yourself. And if you're going to do that, sometimes, the way people do it is that they go back to school, right? They get a different degree. They start getting an internship. Everything and every one of our clients is all about the experience that you have, right? So there's got to be something about your experience or how you're writing your resume that could hopefully relate to something else that you might be interested in. And it's interesting for recruiters, right? We don't get paid. Our clients will not pay us to change someone's career, right? If I have someone and they say, give me a hedge fund controller, and I want them to, be from a multi-strat hedge fund and be a CPA, I can't show them someone who wants to get into a hedge fund and who's currently doing compliance. It's not the right fit, right, on day one. So the recruiters will have a harder time placing you. Recruiters generally could place you if you're, looking to do something within your background. But if you wanted to reset your career, depending on what you want to do, you might look at things that are more sales driven, right? There are a lot of sales, different industries that'll let you come in and they're willing to take more of a chance because they're focused more about your personality than they are just about your overall experience. So, you have to look at things like that. You might want to, take an internship or get involved in some club, or, that's where you got to leverage your LinkedIn groups. Also, your LinkedIn connections to say, hey, is there anything, even if it's not necessarily the position you want, but if you are like, I want to get involved with media, you know what? Leverage your background. Media companies have tons of different positions, right? From a CFO to sales to executive assistants to media productions, advertising. So, but get into the company you want first. Work your way up, build relationships, and then move internally within these companies. And that's a great way to, kind of push along your career is, if you go to a company and you want to change your career, if you work with these people, they'll give you a shot because now they know that you're hardworking, you're smart, and they'll give you a shot to do something you aren't necessarily qualified to do. But it's hard. It is hard to change your career because first you got to figure out what you want to do, which is the hardest thing. But I would take it and break it up into smaller steps and think a little shorter term. And what is your long-term goal, right? So you're probably not going to get to your long-term goal on your next move, but people do, they get lucky. But what would move you one step closer to that? So it doesn't have to be the ideal job, but as I said before, it's got to be making you more marketable to get you closer to where you want to be.
Okay, thank you.
Hope that helped.
Deborah?
Yes. I'm a freshman, and you mentioned building connections. Should I start now or wait till I'm like a junior or senior? I'm majoring in professional accounting, so I have 5 years.
So are you referring to LinkedIn specifically, or?
With any companies or the alumni, should I start now or wait?
I think the earlier you start, the better. Randy, wouldn't you agree, right? Create a LinkedIn profile, get a picture up there, start building out and putting up your internships and whatever you have done, and start building, a collection of connections, right? Of anyone, it could be start with family members. It could be then, they might be to introduce you to some people, right? So I would start day one. I would start now. Earlier the better.
Also, some relationships take a long time to foster. So the more time you can spend just connecting with people and reconnecting with them, you can establish some good relationships for yourself that will go a long way.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Sorry, I actually have a question.
Sure.
So I'm junior and I'm an international student from Japan. So in this situation, during the pandemic, I think it's especially a hard time for an international student or even foreigners to find a job in the United States. So do you have any advices in order to get internship or look for someone who look for a job?
That's also a good question. So it really depends, and I'm not a I'm not a a lawyer, for visas and stuff like that, but a lot of it has to do with what type of visa that you're on. A student visa, obviously, I don't think is going to get you employment, but what we have dealt with in the past is people on the H-1B visa, which is transferable, and the thing about the H-1B is that you have to get a company that is willing to sponsor you, right? And once they do, I believe you have 2 rounds that you could go on it, and then they have to decide if they'll sponsor you for a green card, right? So most of the companies that, in what type of profession would you be talking about
Uh,
specifically?
I'm interested in marketing,
Okay.
but anything is okay.
Yeah, so you probably, I mean, not necessarily because we've done it. We've actually hired a couple of some of our really good recruiters who are from England, but typically the bigger companies have a policy, and they do have a number. They recruit internationally, so they're very accustomed to the process and how it works, and can bring you on board and get you the proper type of visas. But it probably is a little bit more challenging, especially in this COVID environment. I'm sure Donald Trump made it harder with not letting as many visas out there. But hopefully that opens up, and your ultimate goal would be to get an H-1B visa and ultimately get a green card, I would think, right? Because once you have that green card, you don't need any sponsorship or anything, but initially you should look when you're applying to positions and let them know I'm going to need some sort of sponsorship in order to bring me on board. But hopefully you can leverage off, again, your background, maybe your language skills and things like that. There are a lot of international companies, right, out there that might be like, yeah, we do this all the time. This is great. The companies from Germany, Japan, China, England, that are constantly, hiring people and have no issues getting people sponsored.
Thank you very much. Are you actually accepting internship from international student?
Randy?
We haven't had an internship program in a while. We find we're more comfortable hiring entry-level professionals who can continue working with us, not be pressured to go back to school or have other commitments. So we haven't had an internship program in several years. Rob, you would know better if we plan on.
Yeah, I mean, to Randy's point, the interns for us, it's a little tough because our recruiters are the ones really training them, and our recruiters are so busy that it's kind of like, I don't know. It's just not a program we had. What we found has been successful is that if we hired someone entry level, we put them in a research program. We let them tour different areas of the company and recruit and help assist in recruiting for different areas till they find the one that really clicks with them. That has worked for us, but the internships program is not something we have set up as of yet.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for asking.
Anyone else? I do want to take this time to thank Liz for being a student leader here. She's been volunteering to help out with a lot of the backpacks to briefcases, as some of her classmates have, and especially as a sophomore to be able to step up and do that and take that initiative is really good. If anyone else has a question, I do have a little bit of a softball, is that I've talked with literally thousands of our alumni, and one of the themes that I hear again and again is on imposter syndrome. The idea that if you come from Oneonta, you're from upstate New York, you're not from a Big Ten school, or you're not from a name brand school outside of, say, education, but obviously rising in name recognition. How do people get past that and be able to compete alongside of some of the organizations that may have a stronger brand recognition?
Yeah. Listen, that was me, right? I was competing against SUNY Binghamton, like Randy, and SUNY Albany, and then all the privates and Syracuse and stuff like that. You got to do something that makes yourself stand out, right? Or else you're going to get beat out. because there's always going to be a better student out there. There's always going to be a school that has a better program in something. But you got to use what you have to really shine. If that's your personality, great. If that's your creativity, great. You have to not take no for an answer. That's what I've learned, is that, people might look at it as being aggressive. I don't look at it. I'm not aggressive. I am persistent. I don't want to take no, especially in something that I believe in, right? So I think you just got to be passionate about what you do, and, kind of sell your experiences, whether, I tell my kids this, it doesn't matter where you go to school. And I'll be honest with you, it doesn't matter where you go to school, but it does in a way, because you make all your friends and everything like that, and your life experiences. And it's such a pivotal moment in your career that Randy could tell you, I could tell you. If I look, one of my partners went to SUNY Albany, the other one went to Brooklyn College. But the people we hire, some of them are all over the map, from Big Ten schools, Ivy League schools, and stuff like that. So, and some of our recruiters, and Randy could tell you, I've tried to hire a couple Ivy League people that, they're almost too smart for their own good. They're what they are, having their being so smart, they lack in personality. And it's like they're just, I'm not making a broad statement, but, they're not a lot of them might not be well-rounded, right? They're book smart, they're not street smart, right? There's a big, big difference, right? Anyone, could retain this or retain that. Again, I'm sure you could sit there, if you studied hard enough and long enough, you could retain anything. You can't teach someone how to be how to have persistence, or how to have work ethic, or how to, either you grew up like that. And, that's when I look at someone coming from a SUNY school, even though my daughter doesn't go to a SUNY school, it's kind of like, hey, why'd they go to a SUNY school? My first question is, where do you grow up? What were your parents doing? Did you work when you were in high school? Did you work in college? Tell me about, I want to know that it's been ingrained in you, from the very beginning. Not to say we have some people that went to, private schools, and yes, they got handed everything and they have great personalities and they're also successful. But, for me, my experience is I love the true grit. I love to hear the story as to, what's kind of driving you behind the scenes, right? So I think Oneonta is a good school. I think, if you're going to go be a Goldman Sachs investment banker, no, they're not hiring you. For the fact that you came from, because they recruit from 5 schools, right? So, you go a different path, right? And that's why, again, people that went to Oneonta know Oneonta, and they understand there's some really smart people, and they wanted to have a smaller school environment. They just wanted to have a social environment, or whatever reason, right? I have people that I graduated, they're CFOs of private equity firms. They got into the Big Four like Randy. They did it. So they just really worked hard. They leveraged, their grades. They worked really hard. Their networks and everything like that. So you're definitely coming at a little bit of a disadvantage, but again, you gotta use everything. Oneonta is just a piece of the puzzle. It's, what's your degree? What's your GPA? What do you do for an internship? What do you do outside? What do you do? How do you get involved in, these school, whether it's, the school clubs and stuff like that. It's all that stuff. Do you play sports? We've hired a lot of NCAA athletes, and sometimes they're great and sometimes not so great. So again, it could be an uphill battle, but you got to sell Oneonta. I think most people, if you really go about it the right way, they open up.
That's great. Thank you. I'll leave it up to students to ask one more question. I think we have time for one more, and then our hour is complete. But ahead of that, I just want to, again, thank you very much, Rob, and your staff for being here and inspiring that next generation.
Yeah, definitely. Always happy to help. And again, if anyone has questions or anything, you could shoot me an invitation on LinkedIn. Happy to stay in touch with you. You have any career questions or anything, happy to continue to communicate.
All right. Anyone else? This is your last chance. Going, gone. Lisa.
No, I just wanted to say thank you again so much. I know, Tim said it, Charlene said it. We just, we really, really appreciate you both, you being here and appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, our pleasure.
All right. Well, I hope to see you in New York at some point in the near future. But until then, thank you very much for everyone for joining us remotely. And hopefully we'll have fewer Zoom calls, but it has made life a little bit easier in some respects.
Absolutely. Yeah. Everyone stay safe. All right.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Take care.